LSU lands a 5-star edge for the class of 2026. We've got what you need to know. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. How about it, y'all? LSU lands 5-star edge Trenton Henderson out of Pensacola. Was surprised. What wasn't, however, is that LSU missed on a 3-star linebacker, J.J. Bush out of Alabama. We'll get to that in a smidge. And also, we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of the current LSU Tigers and where they project to next 2 weeks and MLB Draft. That's all coming up here on today's episode. So thank you for being with us. But let's start with the gigantic news. Trenton Henderson, 5-star edge out of Pensacola, has picked LSU. 24/7 rates him as a 5-star, the number 28 overall prospect in America. He's the 4th best edge rusher in America, according to 24/7. Now, in the On3 composite, so that's combining On3, 24/7, ESPN rivals, combine all of them. And he is the number 59 overall player in the country. So no matter how you slice it, this is a top 60 overall player in the composite, number 28 overall, regardless of position, by 24/7. So a truly elite edge rusher, 6'4", 225 pounds. And my goodness, not only is this a guy who is a top flight prospect that everybody wanted, in his announcement, which was streamed live by 24/7, he had LSU, Florida, and Texas hats on the table. But man, he had offers from everybody. LSU, Auburn, Florida, Michigan, Texas, Florida State, Southern Cal, Bama, Miami, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Ole Miss, you get the point, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Illinois, Washington, Kansas, Wisconsin, you get it by now. Had offers from everybody. Pick of the litter, go where you want. He picked LSU. And a gigantic hat tip to Kevin Peoples. Kevin Peoples was the primary recruiter here. And remember, Kevin Peoples was brought in from Missouri as the edge rusher coach, the outside linebacker edge rusher coach, where Blake Baker had coached with him at Missouri. They brought Blake Baker comes in. They bring in Kevin Peoples. They also bring in Jake Olson to coach safeties. So Blake Baker knew what he had. By the way, Kevin Peoples, also a guy who comes kind of from that Pete Jenkins tree, has a great lineage there. Coach Pete has been on this show in the past, the godfather of all defensive line coaches, and has raved about Kevin Peoples and not only his ability technically as someone who can coach the defensive line, the edge rushers, but also clearly as a recruiter. So you get a 5-star edge rusher and a guy that everybody wanted. And now when you start to look at this class for LSU, that checks a major box because LSU, as of right now, with the addition of Trenton Henderson, now has 12 commitments. And Henderson is the 3rd highest rated commit in the class. Tristan Keys, the 5-star receiver, is the highest rated, the number 1 receiver in the country, number 5 overall prospect. Richard Anderson, the number 1 defensive line prospect in America, the number 26 prospect in the country, and then there's Trenton Henderson. So your 3rd highest ranked prospect in the class of the 12 commits you have, but maybe more importantly, he is the first edge rusher in the class of 2026. Certainly won't be the last, but here's why this is so significant. Remember how LSU built this roster in 2025. They went into the portal. They knew they needed help at edge rusher, and they went and added 3 veteran edge players. Jack Pyburn from Florida, Jamari Butler from Nebraska, Patrick Payton from Florida State. That's fantastic. And when we were out there in spring practice and they ran the 2 deep, they ran in tandems. You saw Jack Pyburn and Gabe Relaford, and you saw Patrick Payton and Jamari Butler. Those were the tandems that ran. Of those 4 I just mentioned, 3 are transfers that are gone after this year, which means when you go into 2026 and Henderson is a 5-star member of the class of 2026, you're losing 3 of your top 4 guys. Now, when you just look at numbers beyond there, you're losing Payton, Butler, Pyburn. You will have in 2026 Relaford back for his 3rd season, his true junior season. Also remember, Kalaj Cobbins came in a year ago with Relaford, as did C.J. Jackson out of Tucker High School in Atlanta, Georgia, 6'4", 240. So you're going to lose those veterans. Your 3rd-year players are going to be Relaford, Cobbins, and Jackson. Also remember, you've got Dylan Carpenter, who is a year older than those guys. Carpenter's entering his 3rd season in Baton Rouge this year in 2025. Those 4. That's it. You do have Damian Shanklin, and Shanklin was one of the top edge rushers in this class, so coming in as a true freshman. So the 4 that I mentioned, 3 entering their 3rd year, 1 Dylan Carpenter earning his 4th year, and then you've got who I just mentioned there, and Damian Shanklin. Notice a trend there? You don't have any experience outside of Gabe Relaford. So the edge rusher spot is going to be wide open in 2026. So if a guy like Trenton Henderson, as a 5-star, comes in, he's going to look around, and the only guy with meaningful playing time that's going to be on the roster is Gabe Relaford for 2026. So there is a real chance, this isn't just, he's a 5-star, he's going to come in and be great. There's a real chance for him to come in and contribute immediately, maybe not as an every down player. And yes, LSU is likely going to go into the portal in 26 and add some veteran pieces in the portal at defensive end because you're going to have to. You're not going to go into the season with only Gabe Relaford or Gabe Relaford being your only experienced edge rusher. But the point is, this is a guy who comes in with massive credentials that kind of rivals what we saw in 2018 when you brought in Caleb Von Chasson. Now, Chasson came, or 2017. When Chasson came in as a 5-star edge, that was a guy who you knew right away could get on the field. And he did. And then 18, of course, had the unfortunate ACL. In 2019, had a great season, became a first-round draft pick. All that to say, when you kind of look back through the years, and I was asked this question on Wednesday morning, when the last time LSU had a really great defensive line. In the 2 years I came up with, although, hat tip to 2019 when LSU won the national championship, but realistically, you had Rashard Lawrence and Braden Fehoko, who Lawrence was a very good player. Fehoko was a very nice player as well, became an NFLer. You had Apuaika as well as a rotational piece on the interior in that 3-4. Chasson became a first-rounder. Michael Divinity was another end on that team, if you remember. But outside of Chasson, you didn't have the real high-end NFL elite talent. You'd have to go back to 2016 or even 2011. And in 2016, you had Arden Key in his All-America season. You had a Lewis Neal, who was a great edge rusher that season. You had interior players like Devon Gottschall, who went on to be a really good NFL player. Really, if you go back to 2011, that's when you had Logan, Brockers on the interior, Mingo, Montgomery on the end. Like, that was the last really great one. And maybe you're starting to rebuild that again with the way you're recruiting. Obviously, Richard Anderson, 5-star, number 1 defensive lineman in the country coming in 26. Henderson, 5-star, one of the top edge rushers in the country in 2026. Maybe you're getting back to that with the focus on the defensive line, because you would certainly strayed from there for a while. And Trenton Henderson now, look, I get it also. There are cynics out there that are going to say, don't care about commitments. Talk to me when they sign on the dotted line and they show up on campus. And I don't blame you if you're cynical. I don't blame you. But I'll always say I'd rather have the commitment than not have the commitment. And we're talking about a 5-star edge rusher, which is one of the best players in the country at a great position of need with an opportunity to make an immediate impact when he gets here in 2026. I'll take that commitment every day of the week. It should be celebrated. Great job by Kevin Peoples, by Blake Baker, Brian Kelly, this whole staff to land Trenton Henderson out of the panhandle of Florida there in Pensacola. He's committed to LSU now for the class of 2026. The Tigers did, however, on Wednesday miss on a player many pundits thought they were going to land. So what does that mean for the Tigers moving forward? We'll get to that as we continue here. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO. It gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, all of your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If there's a financial goal, for example, that you're trying to get serious about, Monarch Money can help you do that. You ever wish you had all of your accounts and spending in one place? You can do that with Monarch Money as well. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Well, LSU celebrating landing Trenton Henderson on Wednesday, but disappointing that LSU missed, you recall, on J.J. Bush. Now, if you're an everydayer, you heard this just one day ago. Shea Dixon from On 3 The Bengal Tiger was here. We played a soundbite from Shea about J.J. Bush. This was Shea again the day before J.J. Bush, the 3-star linebacker, made his announcement.
There could be a double dose of commitments tomorrow if everything goes well for LSU. We've seen some other teams kind of have a run here after LSU and Southern Cal jockey back and forth for the number 1 class all offseason. Georgia got hot, Notre Dame, Bama. So this kind of top 5 is shaking up a bit over the summer as all these kids go into July saying, hey, look, I'm going to be a senior. A lot of them early enrolled, so it's like I'm just going to focus on school, football, my final semester here in high school. So they make decisions now, and I think that when you look at J.J. Bush, LSU's led the whole time. He's been the number 1 priority at linebacker, and kind of really one of the only ones that Blake Baker has really prioritized this cycle, given he's got some depth there. Obviously, there's always the portal, so I think they felt like if they could get J.J. Bush, that'd be a win, and anything else is lagniappe. And it's LSU, Arkansas, Missouri, and look, we're in the NIL era, and teams like Arkansas and Missouri who value a guy like J.J. Bush, these final 24, 48 hours can get nervous, even if you're the lead team like LSU is. But I've got my take on LSU for both guys we talked about. So let's see if I end up 2-0 or 1-1 or 0-2. Hopefully not tomorrow, but yeah, I think it'll be a good day for the Tigers.
It was a good day for the Tigers as they landed the 5-star Trenton Henderson, but Shea went 1 for 2 because J.J. Bush out of Theodore, Alabama, did in fact commit to Arkansas. Had offers from Arkansas, Missouri, Tulane, Miami, LSU, Florida, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Boston College, and Virginia. That was the offer list. Again, he is, J.J. Bush, a 3-star by most outlets. In the composite, he's up to a 4-star now in the composite. So a 4-star in the composite, number 370 nationally. ESPN and Rivals rate him as a 3-star. On 3 and 24/7 rate him as a 4-star. But again, this is a guy that Blake Baker, you heard Shea say it. This is a guy Blake Baker identified and wanted, and LSU missed. 6'3", 205. And this is also significant because when you look at LSU's commitments, and there's 12 of them now, there are no linebackers committed to LSU presently for the class of 2026. So they're going to have to get busy on identifying other linebackers and guys that they want to have in this class after missing here on J.J. Bush. Now, there's one thing I always say about recruits. If you miss on a guy, it stinks. What you want is for them not to go anywhere that you're going to have to see him again. The example I always give is the late, great Joe McKnight out of New Orleans. Joe McKnight was the number one running back in the country. LSU worked so hard recruiting Joe McKnight, and ultimately they missed. McKnight ended up picking Southern Cal. And while that hurt, and it was miserable being at the Bayou Bash that day when Joe McKnight put on that maroon sweater and that Southern Cal cap, the bottom line was you were never going to have to see him. He was going out to the West Coast to play for the Trojans, and you never had to see him. When you miss on Landon Collins or Devontae Smith, and they go to Alabama, and you got to play him every year, that stings because now you're going to have to face him. Same thing here with J.J. Bush. He's going to Arkansas. It's a team that's on your schedule presently anyway, every year, and a guy you're going to have to see. But something Shea said there that I wanted to underscore because I think it's so important is in the NIL portal era, how a team values a prospect matters more. Let me explain. I want to dig a little deeper here so you understand, because I think this is something we're going to see not only in football, but in all sports in this era. So keep in mind, your LSU, your Arkansas, your Missouri, your whoever, you have a budget. You have a budget of what you're going to spend on your roster, okay? So LSU, for example, remember, we're in rev share now. So there's that $20.5 million that's going to be divvied up among all the sports. My understanding is that LSU is going to give about 75% of that to football. So that's going to be roughly $15 million, okay? So LSU has $15 million earmarked for football, and that's going to be about status quo. Now, you can always build on that, add on that with NIL, true NIL via the new clearinghouse and all that stuff, which we'll get to in a second. But you got that $15 million. Well, $15 million has to be divvied up in guarantees among your roster. Well, you've got returning players, you've got budget that you're going to have to set aside to attract players in the transfer portal, incoming freshmen, all of that, you're at the budget, who's getting what guaranteed out of that roughly $15 million. Well, if you're J.J. Bush and you're a 3 or 4 star linebacker who LSU wants very much, but you look around and you go, okay, well, in 2026, you have Michael Van Buren, Colin Hurley. You're gonna have Caden Durham in his junior season, Harlem Berry in his sophomore season. You look at the line of scrimmage with a lot of those young offensive linemen, Carius Kern, guys like that, Solomon Thomas, that you've recruited, that'll be getting a year older. Gabe Relaford will be going into his junior season. Guys like Whit Weeks are probably off to the NFL draft, but my goodness, what are you going to have to do to retain a 5-star cornerback like DJ Pickett? What about Deshaun Spears in his junior year? Like, you have to start thinking. Devon Keys, who might well be a starter by the time his sophomore season is over. You have to start thinking about what are you going to allocate? And so what LSU does is they take that budget, that $15 million, and they allocate it by position. How much of that budget are you willing to spend on quarterbacks? How much are you going to spend on the offensive line? How much are you going to spend on linebackers and cornerbacks and safeties? And you get it. And so then that is broken down by percentage. And then within that position group, each player is assigned a dollar figure. So it's how they break it down. Well, Arkansas, which I think we would all agree, and this isn't a knock on Arkansas, it's just the reality. LSU every year is in the blue chip ratio. They have a better, more talented roster than Arkansas. LSU may not value incoming freshman J.J. Bush the way Arkansas does. So if LSU and Arkansas are both spending $15 million, but J.J. Bush is player, just call it, of the, let's say, 85 scholarship players, let's say J.J. Bush, LSU has at number 60, but Arkansas has him at number 28. Hypothetically, I'm just saying, hypothetically. Well, that dollar amount might be enough to swing J.J. Bush to go to Arkansas because he's a higher value prop for Arkansas than he is to LSU. And that's some of the conversations that are going to be had here. He may love Blake Baker. He may love LSU. He may love the idea of running out of the tunnel in Death Valley and playing for the Fighting Tigers and all that stuff. But for some of these guys, it's going to be a bottom line binary scenario. Who is offering me the most money? And this is an instance where Arkansas probably guaranteed J.J. Bush the most money. And listen, that means LSU still does not have a linebacker committed for 2026. And this is a position that you're going to have to address. Harold Perkins will be gone after this season. West Weeks will be gone. Whit Weeks will be gone. Now, you're very excited about a guy like Devon Keys coming back. But after Devon Keys, it's a bunch of young guys. Jaden Breaker is an incoming freshman. Charles Ross, C.J. Ross, incoming freshman. C.J. Jim Coyley, incoming freshman. Keelan Moses, incoming freshman. Zach Weeks, incoming freshman. You added 5 linebackers in this most recent class. So you're going to lose 3 veteran players, but you've got 5 young dudes plus Devon Keys coming back, plus a guy like Tylen Singleton, who also signed a year ago. But the point is, you're going to have some dudes grow up in a hurry among those young, among the 5 linebackers you signed a year ago. You have some of those guys grow up in a hurry in 2026 or go back into the portal to add someone that can give you some immediate experience depth until those young guys can grow up. But you want to make sure that you're funneling the numbers behind them. And right now, LSU has no linebackers committed. Maybe this is a sign of a shift, of more of a focus for Brian Kelly, Austin Thomas, as they build this roster onto the transfer portal instead of focusing funds in the freshman class, unless if it's a player that's a guy like a Tristan Keys or like a Trenton Henderson, who's a 5-star who you desperately want. It's just how they build the roster is dramatically different now. This is evidence of it. So J.J. Bush picks Arkansas. Where does that leave LSU at linebacker? A lot of work to do before the December signing period. A lot of work still for Jay Johnson to do as we inch closer to the MLB draft. I want to take a quick minute to wrap up and give you a little bit of a thumbnail preview of what I think is going to happen for the current Tigers, who are expecting to hear their names called here in a couple of weeks in Atlanta. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. We will, before the draft, run through every single LSU baseball high school signee for 2026 and where their draft prospects are. I do this every year, have conversations with plenty of buddies who are scouts who will run through for me their draft grades, what they foresee as guys in the LSU class, and how they project. Are they going to sign? Are they certainly coming to LSU? Are they 50-50? Where might they be projected? All that stuff. But I did have the opportunity to run through the list of the current Tigers and what is likely for them in the draft. Now, keep in mind, the draft is a multi-day event coming up while we're at SEC Football Media Days here in a couple of weeks, starting on Sunday, July 13th. And oddly, a year ago, the draft was in Fort Worth while SEC Media Days was in Dallas. This year, SEC Media Days is in Atlanta while the MLB Draft is in Atlanta. So we'll be in Atlanta during the draft, incidentally. So here is, I'm just going to empty my notebook for you on what I've been told about the current LSU Tigers, how they project to the MLB draft coming up here in 10 days, depending on when you're watching or listening to this. So Jared Jones could certainly come back, but he is projected as a 3rd or 4th round pick. He's going to be gone. That may sound like a no-brainer, but remember, he is a right-handed, power-hitting first base DH. Those are a dime a dozen. They're not in high demand. That's why he'll be a 3rd, 4th round pick, but he's got leverage still, so expect Jared Jones to sign. Same with Daniel Dickinson, probably a 2nd or 3rd round pick. The thing that's going to hold Dickinson back, as I understand it, is some scouts have told me defensively he's not very impressive. Doesn't have great feet. So probably never going to be a left side of the infield guy. Will probably always be a second baseman. High at his ceiling there. There's just not a premium on second baseman like there are on shortstop, third baseman. So 2nd, 3rd round for Dickinson is kind of what I understand. Tanner Reeves, I was curious, didn't enter the transfer portal and is not expected to be drafted despite his potential. It means Tanner Reeves would be back next year and vying for a job in the LSU rotation, which could be fascinating to see. You're losing 3 starters on your infield. The only infield starter who's back is going to be Stephen Milam at short. Everybody else is gone. Jones, Braswell, Dickinson, and of course Luis Hernandez as well, but Aaron Beatty's going to be your catcher. But there's 3 spots available. It looks like Tanner Reeves is primed to come back and compete for one of them. Chris Stanfield, we've talked about, is fascinating. I was told he's about a 50-50 proposition whether or not he gets drafted. And that's really interesting because if he's back, it could create a log jam in the outfield, but we'll see how that goes. We know Cade Anderson, very likely the first overall pick. Anthony Ianson was told probably a compensatory round pick, probably a late 30s, early 40s pick, a guy that's probably going to make $1.5 million, $2.5 to $3 million. Chase Shores is maybe the most fascinating test case, and I probably need to give myself a little more time to expand about Shores, but he's probably slotted in as a guy that's going to make $2 to $2.5 million. And the decision is, do you take that? Do you come back, try to be a starter with the leverage you have from the Tommy John year, and maybe be a starter at LSU and become a top 15 overall pick and make an additional $5 to $7 million? It's a risk that Chase Shores is going to have to decide about. Jacob Myers, 4th, 5th round pick. He'll certainly sign. Zach Cowan's another interesting one. A team, as I understand it, rounds 8 to 14, probably $150K signing bonus. Will a team take a flyer? And then there's guys like Connor Benj, Connor Ware. Both are expected to be back at LSU next year. So we'll see what roles they may fill. The big questions, of course, are going to be a lot of those high school guys, and we will get to that next week in advance of the draft right here on Locked On LSU. Hey, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.